Hello, good morning, good evening. You have made it to a Visa Live session. My name is Claire Almand. I'm the Director of Growth Marketing at MPOWER Financing. If you don't know much about MPOWER, we provide funding for students exploring school in the United States or Canada. I've had the pleasure of working at MPOWER the past 9 years, it's been almost a decade, and it's been great working for a company of former international students on a mission to make funding easier for future international students like you. With me today, I have Dan from Udeti. He is a former visa officer and has a lot of wisdom to share with you today, so you get the most out of your own visa experience. And so, Dan, maybe you can introduce yourself for our audience.
All right. Thank you, Claire. Hello, everybody. My name is Dan. I'm a former visa officer, a former consular officer with the U.S. Department of State. Served at a number of embassies and consulates around the world, interviewed tens of thousands of visa applicants, including many thousands of F-1 student applicants. So I've got a little bit of experience, and thank you all for joining us here today. Let me go ahead and share my screen. The session for today is called Overcoming U.S. Visa Denials. So it is designed for students who may have experienced an F-1 visa refusal before and want a clearer and more strategic path forward. However, a lot of the information in this presentation will be very relevant for those of you who are going for your very first visa interview as well. But if you've been reviews before, chances are you've already done a lot right. You got admitted to a U.S. school, you secured that I-20, you prepared all your documents, and yet maybe that interview didn't go quite the way that you expected. And so that disconnect and why people get refused is exactly what we're going to try to talk about a little bit today. So F-1 visa refusals, they're rarely about just a single missing document or a simple mistake. More often than that, they come down to how your story was really understood in a very short interview. These interviews can be extremely short. So your study plan, your finances, your future goals, how clearly all those pieces fit together have to be conveyed very quickly. So the goal here for today will be to help you understand how consular officers, visa officers think about these F-1 cases, why refusals happen even to qualified students, and what actually needs to change for a second interview to be successful if you've already had that first interview and it didn't go as you hoped. Most importantly, to make one thing clear right from the start here, if you have been refused before, that refusal is not the end of the road. With the right adjustment, many students are approved on their next attempt. So I'll try to keep this presentation to about 30 minutes or so, and then we will open things up for some questions and discussion, and hopefully some mock interviews as well for those of you who would like to volunteer for that. So before we really get into why refusals happen and how to fix them, let me try to ground us a little bit in what is actually at stake when an F-1 visa is denied, why you would hopefully not get a visa denied. So the first really is time investment. Each visa attempt that you make, it isn't just that day of the interview. It's everything leading up to the interview. It's preparing your narrative, it's updating that DS-160, gathering your documents, paying your fees, booking the appointment, and then you're often having to coordinate all of that with your school's timeline. So every attempt really does take a lot of preparation. Second is a financial cost. Those visa fees are non-refundable, and when you reapply, those costs can add up. On top of that, students, of course, have to pay for a lot of other things: the test, deposits, housing planning, travel to the embassy or the consulate, preparing all those documents. So those refusals can become expensive very quickly. And then the third point on the slide there is the permanent record. And this one is important. A denial, that refusal, it doesn't disappear. So the visa officer, if you've gone for an interview before and you were refused, and you go back for a new interview, the new visa officer is going to see your previous application history, and each refusal is something that can be reviewed for your future applications. So part of getting approved next time is really being ready to clearly explain what happened and what's different now. So we'll talk a little bit more about how to approach a reapplication if you've been refused before in a way that's smarter and clearer and more intentional. Because every attempt really does have a cost, and you want the next one to be your strongest. So after an F-1 refusal, if you've been refused before, one of the most frustrating parts, I think, for students is that they feel like they were never really told why they were refused. If you've been refused before, you likely received a very generic refusal notice. That's that 214B letter. It doesn't really explain the exact reason why you were refused, and that's intentional. Consular officers are not allowed to really provide detailed written explanations of their decisions. So if you're waiting for a letter or an email or something like that that clearly spells out what went wrong, that unfortunately is just never going to come. And so that's why the interview itself really is so important. So if you've been refused before, think back to your actual interview. What questions were asked? How did you answer them? Where did the officer interrupt you or look confused or move on very quickly? So if you've gone for an interview before, try to document that interview. And if you have an upcoming interview and you do get refused, try to write down what happened while it's still fresh. Write down the questions you were asked and your responses as accurately as possible. This will help you moving forward for another interview. And then, try to reflect honestly. What happened? Was I nervous? Did I give short or some unclear answers? Did I struggle to explain my study plan, my finances, or my future goals? So understanding your denial, it's not just about guessing or blaming yourself. It's to try to identify certain patterns so that you don't repeat those same mistakes in your next interview. So let's talk about what some of the different weaknesses are that could result in an F-1 refusal. So the first one is ties or future plans. And keep in mind this information applies to you even if you've never had an interview before and have not been refused. So ties or future plans. This is really one of the most important ones for all visa classes, and it certainly is relevant for F-1 visas. A lot of students really struggle to clearly explain what they plan to do after graduation. If your answers about returning home, your career plans, or your long-term goals were vague or uncertain, the officer is possibly not going to be convinced that you intend to leave the United States after your studies, and they will refuse you very quickly if they're not convinced of that. The second one is clarity of the purpose of what you're doing, and this is very much connected to those ties and future plans as well. This is about why you chose this particular school and this particular program. If your explanation sounded overly generic, if it sounded memorized, if it sounded disconnected from your background, if it just didn't make sense based on who you are, the officer might have questioned whether your academic plan truly made sense for you. The third one on there is inconsistencies. So there could be maybe some differences between what you wrote on your DS-160 and what you said in the interview, or some answers that changed during the interview under some follow-up questioning. Even just small contradictions, and sometimes these happen, honest mistakes. Again, a lot of applicants are nervous, but those small contradictions can cause the officer to find the applicant to not be credible. And once they have any doubt, they'll hit that refusal button very quickly. Remember, the interviews are very quick. The officers have to make the decisions in about 2 minutes. And so as soon as they find one thing that makes this applicant sound not credible, they will likely deny the visa. And then finally, what we have on there is the financial status. So this doesn't always mean that you lacked the funds to pay for your education. A lot of times, what I find is that students do have the sufficient finances, but they struggle to clearly explain where that money came from, or who is supporting them, or how this financial plan is sustainable over time. So when you look at all these things together, the key takeaway really is that most refusals come down to clarity, credibility, and confidence. It's not just missing a single document. So we're going to look at each of these areas a little bit more as we move forward here, and we'll talk about how to strengthen them so they don't come up as concerns. All right. So how do you demonstrate strong ties? This is one of the most important concepts in any visa interview, as well as F-1 visa interviews. It's ties to your home country. So we see here on the slide, it's broken it down into three main areas that the officers often look at. First one is employment or education. So this could include things like your current job, if you have one, some past work experience, or a clear academic progression. The officers want to see that studying in the United States fits logically into your background and that it supports realistic opportunities back home. Remember, not opportunities in the United States, but how is this education going to help you when you return home? The second one on there is family. So close family members such as parents, siblings, other types of dependents who remain in your home country can be a very strong tie. What matters is not just that they exist, though. It's whether you can clearly explain your connection to them and your responsibilities to them. And then the third one that we have on here is home ownership, significant assets, these sorts of things, property. Uh, this could include a family business, or any type of significant asset that's belonging to you or your immediate family. Again, the key here is that you can explain this clearly and confidently when you're being asked about it. An important reminder, and this will really be a theme throughout, and a big piece of advice that I have for all of you is that ties are not just documents. Don't rely on your documents. You might be asked to hand some documents over during your interview, and you might not. But typically, you don't hand a lot of documents over. What you really need to be able to do is to explain yourself. You need to be able to explain your ties, because that officer, again, is evaluating how credible and believable your story sounds in a very short conversation. A lot of officers are trained that anybody can print out a piece of paper that says anything. So they really are assessing you based on how credible you sound at that interview. Again, overall, strong ties are really about showing that your life, your future, and your long-term plans make sense outside of the United States, even while you're studying there temporarily. All right, so if you've been refused before, you probably are going to get asked what has changed, or some questions similar to that. This is really one of the most common questions after a prior refusal. What's changed since the last time? Even if the officer doesn't ask that directly, they're likely thinking it, and it's probably a good idea to try to address it when you're talking to the officer. So the first step is to anticipate that question. If you reapply after a refusal, you should assume that the officer knows your refusal history and they expect a clear reason why the outcome should be different now. And you want to be as specific as possible. Vague answers like, I understand the process better, usually just aren't enough. Officers are looking for more concrete changes, and this could be updated academic plans. It could be some clearer career goals, stronger financial explanations, or any type of new circumstance that directly addresses that previous concern. And finally, you want to show growth. This doesn't necessarily mean that something has dramatically changed in your life. Growth can mean that you've taken the time to understand where your interview fell short and that you've worked to communicate your plans more clearly and confidently. So the goal is not to try to convince the new officer that the original decision was wrong, but it is to show that you are a stronger and clearer applicant than you were before. All right, so how can you improve these interview skills? This is really something that can completely change an outcome. So even if your life situation hasn't changed very much from that refusal, If you can improve your interview skills, it truly can change the outcome of the decision that the officer will make. The first one on here is practice your delivery. A simple way to do this is to record yourself answering some of the common F1 questions and then listen back to that recording. Do you sound clear? Do you sound confident? Or do you sound uncertain and scattered? The goal here is that maybe this will help reduce some of that nervousness and make your answers feel a little bit more natural. Now, with that said, you don't want to sound like you've memorized your answers at the interview. So when you're practicing your answers, something I recommend to everybody is don't say it the same way every single time. Try to memorize some certain themes, the key points that you want to make sure you include in your answers, but don't memorize them word for word. If you sound robotic or like you're reading something off of a script, the officer might not find you credible at the interview. You want to make sure that you prepare some very clear responses. You want concise answers. Remember, the interview is very quick, but so you want some concise answers that get to the point, especially about your program choice and your future plans. Try to think of it as one very strong sentence and then one supporting detail to that sentence. Don't try to overload the officer with a long explanation. 2 or 3 sentences for each of these answers. Try to when you're thinking about how to address previous weaknesses, if you were refused before, you should be ready to explain what went wrong in a confident way. For example, this slide gives some language. I wasn't able to articulate myself well enough previously. I chose this school because dot dot dot. The key is acknowledge that gap and then deliver a stronger explanation during this interview. And then time management. Spoke to this one already, but again, yeah, keep those answers short, under 30 seconds. Focus on those key points without rambling. That can be easier said than done. A lot of us, myself included, start to ramble a little bit when we're nervous, but you want to try to keep those answers short. Those officers are making the decisions very quickly, and long answers often create some confusion or contradictions. And so the takeaway line there at the bottom of the slide, that's important. Even without major life changes, improved communication truly can make the difference. All right, so what are some common mistakes to avoid? First one that we've got here is vague answers. Single word or very general responses don't really help to build your case. Answers like better education or good university, they don't really explain why this particular program makes sense for you. Officers need clarity, not just keywords. So the second one here is repeating the same errors. If you've been refused before, a lot of students reapply with that exact same approach and hoping for a different outcome. But if nothing about your explanation or your presentation has changed, the result, unfortunately, usually won't change either. Third mistake is dishonesty. Hiding information, exaggerating some of the facts, or just trying to sound better than reality can seriously damage credibility. Consular officers really are trying to spot inconsistencies. And once that trust is lost, it's hard to recover. And finally, just simply being unprepared. This includes, not understanding why you were refused before, not anticipating some of the follow-up questions, or just not being ready to explain the officer's main concern from that previous interview. So if you can avoid these types of mistakes, you really can significantly improve your chances of getting your visa approved, often without doing big dramatic changes to your school, your finances, or your long-term plans. All right, so if you've been refused before, one of the biggest questions that students ask after an F-1 refusal is, when should I reapply? So there's 3 phases here that the slide breaks this down into. So first, you've had that initial denial. During that stage, the important thing is to understand why you were refused. Rushing to book another appointment without clarity on that often leads to the same result. Next is the preparation phase. This is where real progress happens. You try to address some weaknesses from the interview, gather any new or more clear evidence, and also work on explaining or work on improving how you can explain your academic plans, your finances, and your future goals. And then finally, ready to reapply. You should reapply when you actually have something new to show, or when you are very much when you're better prepared to explain your case than you were before. So there's no real universal waiting period that guarantees approval. Timing matters less than substance. A well-prepared reapplication is going to be far more important than a fast one. All right, so I am again, I'm a consultant with Udeti. Prior to that, I was a visa officer doing these interviews. So how can Udeti and consultants like myself help you to succeed? Well, you might be realizing at this point that F-1 refusals aren't just about eligibility. They're really about how the story is presented. And that's where Udeti tries to focus its support. So as the slide says here, we don't just offer mock interviews, though that is very much part of our consultations, but we really try to help students discover and clearly articulate their unique story. And that's going to be the one that actually resonates with the visa officer. A lot of students walk into interviews with very strong backgrounds, but they don't realize where their real strengths are or how to explain them effectively. And that's why strengths discovery is such an important part of the process. We also try to focus very heavily on story crafting. This means building a coherent narrative that connects your academic background, your program choice, your finances, and your long-term plans into something that makes sense quickly and clearly. Remember, these officers might only ask you a couple of questions. And so you may not get an opportunity to tell them that really important thing that sets you apart and why they should approve you if you don't say it early in the interview. So regardless of the questions that they're asking you, it's very important that you try to stress why all this makes sense for you and how it's going to help you when you return home. That's really what the officer needs to hear, even if they're not directly asking you, what are your ties to your home country? And so we can help you do all that with a personalized strategy. What you're all different. Every applicant is different, and so what might be a red flag for one student might actually be a strength for another. And so what we can do is tailor advice to your specific situation rather than giving generic interview answers. So the goal is not to memorize responses, but it is to help you walk into that interview knowing exactly how to explain your specific case with confidence and credibility. And finally, once, now that hopefully you understand a little bit more about how these F-1 visa decisions are actually made, the important next step for you all is practice. Specifically, practice your answers as much as you can. And if you can do it with someone like me who's actually sat on the other side of that visa window, that might help you out even more. And this is what we mean by this interview prep here, and you'll see that we've got a discount code for you as well. So we offer these one-on-one sessions with former U.S. consular officers like myself, where we focus on pressure testing those answers, identifying any lingering red flags, and trying to refine how you can explain all of your plans together. And so if this webinar has helped you see where your case might be falling short, this could be a possible next step for you. So there's the code there, MPOWER. That will give you a discount on these sessions if you're interested. Again, my name is Dan, so feel free to request a session with me if you like. But we also have several other wonderful former visa officers that can assist you. And then I'm also going to provide a link for feedback about today's session. I'll drop that in the chat. If you click that link and provide feedback, you'll receive some more free resources from us. But at the end of the day, whether you decide to work with us or not, The key takeaway, if you've been refused before, is don't walk into another interview just hoping it will go better. Walk in knowing that you're better prepared. And so with that, we can open up to some questions. I'm just dropping that into the chat there. I'm not sure if everyone can see that or not, but thank you. That's all I have as far as the presentation goes.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. While you were presenting, I've been collecting the most common questions. So we'll do that maybe the next 15 minutes, and then we'll switch to mock interviews. And I think our team will share that link for you, Dan. I think it went, so everyone will send you the feedback link that Dan mentioned as well. Cool.
Great, thank you.
So, first question, Dan. Some of our attendees actually have not yet had a visa interview before. It's their first time, so it's a little bit newer to them. One of the most common questions that I saw is about sources of funds. And people want to know, hey, my Empower loan technically covers my entire cost of attendance and living expenses. But I also have some personal funds I didn't mention on the I-20, where mom and dad have some funds. How should I think about this? Am I good with just the loan? Is it better to have the multiple sources of funds? What's your advice here?
That's a great question. The officers are going to be most interested in what it says on your I-20. They're going to want to know about that. If it says that you're receiving 100% of your funding from a loan, or if it's split, you're receiving some of it from a loan and some of it from a family member, they're going to really zero their questions in on what that I-20 says, and they're going to ask you some questions about if it's all a loan. The biggest thing that we see with loans is the officer is going to want to know how are you planning on being able to pay this back? And so when the officer, because they're wanting to make sure that this is legitimate and that you're not going to have to, take a some unauthorized employment in the United States to cover expenses. And so the way that you answer this question is really tied to these home ties questions. And so that's when you can start bringing up your parents' business or if they have some additional funding, how they're going to help you pay off this loan. That's where you can bring up these other sources of funding. But keep in mind, really, what they're going to focus on is whatever that I-20 says.
Right. And so, as a follow-up, we have some people mentioning, hey, for the funding question, can I mention a scholarship that I think I'm going to get in the future or a job I'm getting in the future? Does it have to be something I have right now?
I would say okay, so yeah, for a scholarship, you should have that right now if you're going to discuss that as part of your funding. The officers aren't going to be, generally speaking, you want to try to avoid any sentence that starts with "I hope." You really want to have clear, concrete plans, and that includes how you're going to be funding your education. If you have a scholarship, that is great. It certainly covers part of the financial cost, but it also helps to show that perhaps that you have some academic merit. It also shows maybe there's a reason why you chose this particular school because they offered you a scholarship. So it's certainly a great thing to discuss if you actually have one, but I would not talk about it if you don't have one yet. For future jobs, that's a great thing to talk about. And not necessarily just how you're going to answer the funding question, but it's how you're going to talk about your plans after you graduate. Because remember, you want this degree to make sense. You're spending a lot of money. These questions are about finances and taking out loans. So you're spending money on this. And so there should be a very clear reason why you're doing this, why you're taking out a loan, or why your parents are taking out a loan for you. So there should be you should have a very clear understanding of the type of jobs, the type of career goals that you have, and how this education is going to help you achieve those goals.
Right. And just to make it more tangible for everyone, can you give us an example of a good answer and a bad answer? Maybe starting with the bad answer. If someone were to ask about, funding, how are you funding your education?
Yeah, of course, yeah. A bad answer for a lot of this again comes down to credibility. And so when people have a lot of students, their parents are helping them at least with part of their financial planning for their education. And so officers will often ask, what do your parents do? Your father's helping you. What does he do? And the bad answers are and I have heard this many times, on the other side of the visa window is just very uncertain. They don't know. I don't really know exactly how much money my father makes. Or he does something with IT, I think. It's that type of vague answers where it sounds like maybe you're making something up. You should know what your parents do if you're relying on them to help you fund the education. A good answer uh, in that same line of thought is trying to add a little bit of additional information, show how stable your parents are. A good answer is, oh, well, my father, he's been a university professor for more than 20 years. And this is how he's always very much valued education, and this is why he is helping to support me financially. So when you're able to show that, this is not your parents not only have the means to pay, remember anyone can print out a bank statement, but when you show that they actually have some stable employment, talk about how long they've worked at a place, or if they own a business, how many employees they have, these sorts of things help to really build that stability. And officers love to hear those sorts of things and the answers to the questions.
Hmm, great. Dan, by the way, do you mind stopping your screen share so people can see you a bit?
Oh, absolutely. Let me do that. Here we go.
So people can see you. Yes, awesome. So next question is around a lot of questions about sort of the new immigration news that's come out. Two different questions. One person mentioned that they're from a country that has a partial immigration ban, and they're curious if that may affect their chances or if their visa is going to be declined. I think they're referring to the recent ban for immigrant visas that just came out.
Hmm. Yeah, so as you just said there in the question, that ban is about immigrant visas, as opposed to non-immigrant visas, which are what F-1. So the F-1 visas are not affected by that ban. I would say, however, that if you are from one of those countries on that ban, there's certainly a likelihood that your case is being scrutinized a little bit more than if you are from a country that is not part of that ban, unfortunately. But it is not a pause on approving F-1 visas like it is for immigrant visas to the United States.
Great. I just see we got a bunch more questions. I'm going to just do a brief check to see if something new, a new topic came up. Guys, keep the questions coming in. We're happy. We're here for you. We want to answer as many as possible. A lot more about funding, Dan. Some people have mentioned their first visa interview. They were asked how they plan on repaying back the loan. Is there an example of a good answer and a bad answer, once again, that you could provide?
Absolutely. I mean, the good answer is really try to use that question as an opportunity to talk about your future goals in your home country. That's because that is the most important thing that the officer really needs to hear is what your future plans are. Yes, it's important that you have a way to pay off this loan and that you've thought about it and that you know what you're getting into. But really, the important thing is that you've got some strong ties to your home country. So the strong answer is to say, well, the reason why I chose this particular program and this particular university is that this is going to provide me with the training and skills that I need. I've noticed a gap here within the whatever sector that you're planning on going into, and this is going to help me to get into these roles, and that's going to help you, of course, pay off the loan. Is getting the career. That's a great answer because it really ties into your home ties. I mean, especially bad answer is one that sounds like you're planning to immigrate to the United States. And people will say this at the interviews, that you know, they've got they know that a lot of students that have gone through this particular program have been approached by U.S. employers and they've been able to change status to an H-1B and get a job in the United States. Now, that is a legal thing to do. It's okay to do that, and plans can change. However, when you're applying for a non-immigrant visa, you really want to stress that your ties are outside of the United States and you have no plans to stay in the U.S. You're only in the United States for a temporary period of study at the university. So never say anything that at all sounds like you're planning on staying in the United States and that you're going to use a job in the U.S. to help pay back a loan. Try to talk about how this is really going to help you in the future. Maybe it's a family business, and they're investing in you to help to support a need at the company, and you'll be able to improve the business that way. And this is why your parents are taking out this loan for you, for example. Bring it back to connections to your home country.
Right. So that kind of nicely goes into the next question about STEM OPT. I think you sort of gave the answer, but it'd be great for you to just say directly, how should people think about STEM OPT for the visa interview?
Yeah, same thing like I just said. For purposes of the visa interview, you should not be making that type of plan. You should be really discussing again your plans back in your home country for after you graduate. Plans can change once you're in school. There's nothing wrong with that. You haven't done anything wrong by changing your plans once you're in the U.S. as long as you do it the legal way. And there certainly are the very legal options for doing these sorts of things. But at the interview, if you're being asked about these things, say no. My current plan is to return home where my family is and where I've got this great career opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. These are the sorts of things that you want to talk about when it comes to your future plans.
Right. And everyone, we're going to do 3 more minutes of questions, then switch to mock interviews. So if you haven't volunteered yet and you have a visa interview coming up, please leave us a note and let us know the date. We're prioritizing those that have a visa interview very soon. So maybe 2 more questions, Dan. One is about social media and how to think about the social media request. 2 different sorts of questions. One person asks, do I really need to have all my profiles? What counts, what doesn't? And then there's a follow-up from someone else saying, I don't have access to my accounts anymore. They're that old. What do I do?
Yeah, yeah, there is a lot of confusion about the social media requirement, and honestly, there's a lot of confusion for the officers that are having to deal with this as well. A couple things I'll tell you. One, a lot of the officers don't like this requirement that they're having to do. The same officer that interviews you is the one that will be doing the social media
Oh,
review
interesting.
for you. Um, one thing I would say is that if you get the 221G administrative processing slip at the end of your interview for the social media review, go ahead and breathe out a sigh of relief. That means the officer intends to approve your visa. They don't do a social media review for people that they are refusing. So as soon as you hear that they're doing the social media review, you have an approved visa pending that social media review. The vast majority of people are approved after the social media review. It's actually a very small minority that have any issues in their social media. Um, and just to touch on that real quick, the things that they're looking for are anything that looks like possible immigration to the United States. If you've posted on Facebook, I can't wait to start my new job at this restaurant near the school that I'm going to. That would, of course, be a problem for you. And then, as well as what you've seen in the news, where they're looking for political extremist type of activity on your social media. But to answer more like these questions, yeah, it is kind of difficult. The DS 160 asks for all social media that you've used within the past 5 years, and so that is what you should try to list on your application, even if it's an account that's you haven't used in 3 years, or you've deleted it or deactivated it. You should try to list it on there. One of the things that the guidance that the officers receive is that any perceived attempt to conceal something is going to be considered derogatory by the officers. And so it honestly is better to try to overshare than to try to look like you've concealed something for your on that social media disclosure. A lot of the officers will ask at the end of the interview, is there any, do you have any other accounts that you need to disclose than what you've put on here? So even if you've missed something on the DS-160, there's usually an opportunity to provide something. But as far as what's considered social media, I think that's potentially a little subjective. But certainly all the big ones should be listed on there.
Great. And then I think one final question just on documents. Several people have mentioned that there's things missing that they want to talk about from their I-20 or other documents, basically, that they think make them more credible. How can they weave that into an interview, or do they need to weave that into an interview? Let's say you have actually got a scholarship a little bit later, or mom and dad offer a bit money later, or things like that. How should they present that in an interview? It doesn't help.
Yeah. So documents can be helpful. I mean, broadly speaking, just remember that documents are not really the purpose of the interview. It is a verbal interview. The officers are really making their decisions based on what they're hearing at that interview, much more so than what they see on a piece of paper. That doesn't mean it's not good to bring documents with you. It's better to have them and not need them than to need them and not have them. But typically, what you want to do is you want to say to the officer, I've got some supporting documentation if you would like to see it at the end of your very good explanation as to whatever it is you're talking about. If you're discussing your scholarship, you should really be able to naturally and credibly speak to the type of scholarship it is. What did you do to earn the scholarship? How much is the scholarship? You should have a very natural way of speaking about that. And then you can say, I've got the letter if you would like to see it. But don't rely on what the letter says. Don't just depend on the officer to take the time to actually read the full thing. You should really know how to, concisely summarize the contents of that letter and be able to discuss it because it's your scholarship. Same thing when it comes to finances, parents, bank statements, or your own. You should really be able to just speak to this stuff and then tell the officer, I've got some of their financial documents if you would like to see them. Don't just start pushing documents through the window. A lot of officers really don't like that. A lot of officers don't want to see any documents at all. Some, will take a look, but just think of it as, very much just supporting documentation, and what you say is really being the primary answer to those questions.
Great. And last question we'll sneak in before we switch over. Can you provide a good answer for why this program and a bad answer for why this program? There's some questions around that, and I think that would provide a little bit of clarity. So let's say you got into Holt.
So a bad answer is anything that's generic. A lot of students will say things like, "Well, it's very highly ranked. Uh, this university is very highly ranked, or this program is very highly ranked," and that's great. But a lot of schools, a lot of programs are highly ranked. What really matters is why this is specifically good for you. And so what's important here is that you've done your homework, that you did some research, and there's a reason why you chose this particular university out of every university in the world. There's a reason why you want to go to this university and this particular program. And so a really good answer shows that there's some particular type of course that they offer. There's something about the curriculum that is very strong. There's something that really drew you to it, and that is what you based your decision on. It's also a good opportunity to talk about the financial, part of the equation. Remember that the officer that you're talking to, they're humans as well, and a lot of them went through this exact same, university application process. How am I going to pay? Most of the officers that you're talking to probably took out a loan in order to go to school, and there's a reason why they did it. And so, why the school that they chose may have been because it was more affordable. It may have been because they offered a scholarship that helped to cover part of the cost. That's a good reason to pick a particular program over another. But it's also good if you can tie in a couple of other things as far as what this program specifically offers for the career that you're so interested in pursuing back home after you graduate.
Great. So everyone, we're switching over to mock interviews, and the way this is going to work is our staff is going to take you off mute. You have about 10 seconds to take yourself off mute and say hello. If we don't hear anything from you, after about 10 seconds, we're going to move on to the next person. So just heads up, you need to take yourself off mute and let us know. Dan is going to ask you a few questions, and it helps him if he knows what you're worried about. So if you're worried about the financial aspects, maybe let him know. If you're worried about a certain question, let him know. So Utkarsh, I'm going to turn it over to you for a few mocks.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, I sure can. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Is this going to be your first interview, or have you already had one?
This will be my first visa attempt.
Okay. Do you have any specific concerns?
Um, my area of concern is answering the question how to repay the loan for Empower, but I do have bank statements, my parents' bank statements listed on my DS-160 as well as my I-20 as an additional form of financial support.
Okay. And is the loan, what does your I-20 say? Is it paying for the entirety of your education?
So my I-20 indicates that both my parents' savings as well as the loan covers the entire tuition and living expenses.
Okay. And what type of, is this for a bachelor's degree or a master's degree?
A master's degree in business administration with a major in sustainability.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I'm going to shift into visa officer mode now. So don't worry. I won't be too mean or anything, but I might change my demeanor just a little bit and ask you some questions for the mock interview.
Okay, no problem.
All right, great. All right. So what's your purpose of travel to the United States?
I'm traveling to the United States to pursue a master in business administration with a concentration in sustainability at the University of South Dakota, where I got an admission.
Did you say University of South Dakota?
Yes, the University of
You
South Dakota.
did you apply? Did you apply to any other schools?
I had applied to St. Louis and the University of South Dakota, and I got an acceptance at the USD, which was my priority option.
So why do you want to go to University of South Dakota?
The University of South Dakota offers a master's program that focuses on sustainability. This program has foundational courses in business for someone like me who does not have an undergraduate in business. It has programs in operations management, sustainability innovations, as well as strategic management, which are key areas of learning that would complement my current area of expertise.
What do you do right now? Are you working?
Yes, I work for Econ Holdings Limited. That's a real estate company here in Kenya that focuses on offering affordable and green student accommodation to students.
What
Thus, they
what are you planning on doing after you graduate?
after I graduate, I plan on relocating back home to advance in my career, which is the main reason why I pursued this master's opportunity. However, if I'm able to gain hands-on
How,
industrial experience,
how's it going to help you advance your career?
um, I was looking to work as a development manager, a more higher development role in Econ. Thus, this led me to my research on programs I could take to further my career and
And
advance my
how
position
much
in
is how
Econ.
much is it how much is this going to cost you?
The total tuition and living expenses was 25,120 US dollars, which is covered by my parents' savings.
How are you paying for it? Your parents are paying for it?
Yes, my parents have agreed to cover my loan interest while I'm working for while I'm still studying, as well as I relocate back.
What
And
what do your parents do?
my dad is a project manager at BDM in Kenya, and my mom is a chicken supplies business owner. Together, they run the business. My dad earns an annual salary of 37,500 USD. and this would allow him to comfortably cover my living expenses while I focus on my studies.
Do you have any family in the United States?
No, I do not have any family in the United States. My primary family is from Kenya.
Okay, great. So yeah, let's we'll shift out of mock interview mode. Yeah, overall, I think you answered the questions very well. One thing I would say is that some of that some of that information that I kind of had to dig out of you a little bit as far as what you plan to do after you graduate, or how this degree is going to help you to achieve it. You had good answers to it. Don't wait for the officer to ask you those questions. As soon as they're asking you, why did you choose this school or why did you choose this program, which is a very common question, try to include some of that in your answer. That you chose this because there's something at the school that is going to help you with these future plans back home. That's a really strong way of trying to get your home ties into your answers early in the questions, because remember, you don't know exactly what questions the officer is going to ask you. So if you can, this is a piece of advice for all of you. My biggest piece of advice for today is really try to talk about your home ties as much as possible in every answer to these questions. Of course, you want to do it naturally. Don't just robotically say I have strong home ties when you're being asked about something unrelated. But when you're being asked why this school, why this program, that's a great time to talk about how it's going to help you back home. I think your answer about how you're going to be paying for it. So it sounds like now your parents the loan is not for the entirety of the cost on the I-20. Is that correct?
Sorry?
Is the loan for the entirety of the cost that's on the I-20?
Yes, it covers the loan is 25,000 US dollars, while the total tuition and living expenses is 25,000 US dollars.
Okay, so it's a loan. So that is covering the full thing. So just make sure that when you're answering that question, and I think you did this well. The important thing is that you can really credibly talk about how your parents are able to afford this and why they would want to do it. Do you have any siblings?
Yes, I do have 8 siblings here.
Have your parents helped any of your siblings with their education? Have any of them gone to the United States or done something similar?
No, I am the second born of my siblings, so majority of my siblings are quite young. They're still in primary and high school, secondary education.
Gotcha. Well, it can still be, you could still add a strength in there just about how important it is to your parents that get this education, and here's why. Give a slight, human touch to the question as to why they would want to pay for this. But at the end of the day, the important thing is, can they truly afford it? And if you can talk a little bit more in your answer there about how long your parents have been doing what they're doing, how stable they are. That really helps with the answer as well. But overall, I think you sounded very very composed in your answers. I would just try to get out a little bit more about your home ties early in the interview.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Woo.
Hello,
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great.
So tell me, is this your first interview?
No, this will be my third attempt at the embassy.
This will be your third attempt. Okay, so you've been refused twice before, 214B.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Do you have any idea what might have gone wrong during what happened during those previous two interviews?
Yeah, in the last interview that I went to, I was unable to explain how or why I chose that university, because previously I was going with Quinnipiac University, but I did a change to University of South Dakota.
Okay. So also
And
University of South Dakota. And so did that change for the second interview, or is this a change for your third interview?
This is a change for my third interview.
Okay. All right. That's good that you've got something substantially has changed. Okay. Or do you think the officer had any other types of concerns besides why you chose the university that you chose?
Not at all. I think I didn't convince the visa officer enough. I was not articulate enough to demonstrate my home ties in those questions. So I think that brought about my denial.
And how long has it been since that refusal?
From April, I went for my interview on April 16th last year. Yeah, so I think more than 7 months now.
Okay. So, and by the time you have your third interview, I'm guessing do you have a third interview scheduled already?
Yeah, next week on 27th.
Okay, next week. Okay, great. Okay. Well, do you have what type of concerns do you have about your third interview?
That question on what has changed. I was thinking of talking about what really happened in my last interview because I was not articulate enough to answer the question why I chose that university. And also I did a change. So I was wondering if talking about both of them, if my answer will be very long, or how am I going to answer that one if that question comes up?
I would say, yeah. So when the officer asks you what's changed, I see you were refused before, something along those lines. I think that since you've changed what university you're going to, that's a really substantial change, and that's what you should focus on. Try not to start talking too much about what went wrong at the previous interviews. Really try to stay positive and talk about what changed since the last interview. Now, the important thing is that you have a good reason as to why you made this change, and it's not just to hopefully get a visa. So you'll want to be able to talk about why this university, why this program is a better fit for you academically and for your career goals than your previous university was. Does that make sense? You want to have a good reason for it, for the change.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's try to do the interview here. All right. Okay. So I see here that you've been refused a couple of times before. Is that right?
Yeah, it's right. I got.
Okay. So what's changed since your last interview?
I actually changed my university to University of South Dakota because I
Why'd
was
you do that?
actually impressed by the program's course offering in this university, that is predictive business analytics, that focuses on agriculture, that aligns perfectly with my career goal of coming back as a data analyst at my current workplace at Wamboku Apples Farm. And I also believe studying.
What university were you going to before?
I was going to Quinnipiac University, pursuing the same program in business analytics.
So why is this one better? I don't understand.
Yeah, I did a review of the curricula and found out that the program course offering in this University of South Dakota, has a particular program known as predictive business analytics that focuses on agriculture, that aligns perfectly with my career goal of predicting future outcomes in agriculture and also preparing me as a data analyst when I come back home. And apart from that, studying this program in this university will give me a really good foundation to eventually modernize.
Are you currently working?
Yes, I do work as a resource manager at Wamboku Apples Farm for 2 years now, where I provide insights on market trends to partner farmers and company, and also analyze weather data to advise on best planting times to improve apple productivity.
And what's your family situation like? Are you married?
No, I'm not married, but I come from a close-knit family of 4. My parents do horticultural farming, and my plan is to come back and modernize that. And apart from that, I have a brother who works at St. Regina High School, and I'll be happy.
Who's paying for your education?
I'm fortunate enough to be approved an MPOWER loan of $25,200 that will cover for my tuition and living expenses.
So are you going to be paying this back yourself, or are you getting some help with it?
No, I'm going to pay for myself because I'll come back home because I'm on an approved study leave from my employer. I'll become a data analyst and I will be earning 330,000 Kenya shillings. And this will help me offset 35,300 Kenya shillings per month.
So you're on approved leave from your employer for this to go to the school?
Yes, I got granted an approved study leave from my employer at Wambugu Apples Farm.
And then you'll be returning to them afterwards.
Yes, I will be returning back to them afterwards to continue with my career as a data analyst and also help my parents. Yeah.
So all right, so I'm coming out of the mock interview mode. So yeah, so I think you're a strong applicant. What I would recommend is that you lead with some of that information a little bit earlier. You did very well talking about how this fits in with your future goals back home. But I think if you can stress a little bit more early in the interview that your employer is giving you leave for this, and that they have a position for you when you return. Talk about how this is you're going to be able to go into this new position because you're receiving this new training and these new skills that yourself along with your employer realize that this is a gap at the farm. This is something that they need, so that really helps to strengthen the reason why you'd be coming back home. That you have this very clear plan to be able to do it. Because yes, it's very much connected to that financial question of how you're going to be able to pay the loan back, but it's also just very much connected to why you're going to do this. Why this program? Why this school? Why do you need this degree? Why are you going back to school? The officer could say, hey, you've been working for a couple of years, you've got this experience. Why do you need to go back to school? Why not just stay at your job? All of these sorts of questions, if you can really talk about how this is going to help you with this very not just dream, this is actually some concrete plan that you have, that you're going on leave and then you'll return to the same employer. Talk about that very early in the interview, and I think you'll hopefully have a better result for your third interview. It's true that once you have a couple of refusals, the officer will be thinking to themselves, why should I approve this applicant when my colleagues refuse them? And so having right at the very beginning that something has changed about you really does help. That this is a better fit for you, the school's a better fit, the program's a better fit. I think you did a good job answering that, and that will certainly help the officer listen to the rest of your answers a little bit more. So I think you have a good chance.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So thanks, everyone. We have reached the end of today's live session. As promised, we are going to send out a recording of this session, so don't worry. If you didn't take notes, we're here for you. We're also going to send out a little bit more about Odeti. They had that great link for all of you to get 20% off their services, so we'll be sure to share that as well. Dan, it was great having you here today. Thank you so much for joining. And we loved the switching from presenter mode to visa officer mode. It seemed a bit realistic, so everyone kind of gets that it might, the tone could be a little different depending. And I think just to end the webinar, I'd love to hear just one tip from you, or if there's one thing our audience could take away from this session, what's that one thing you want them to remember?
Well, not to well, first off, yeah, thank you so much for inviting me today. It's really been a pleasure to be here. I will say that my biggest tip, and at risk of just repeating myself a little bit, is those home ties. There's nothing more important than that you have a clear plan back home. If the officer thinks for a second that you have any intention to immigrate to the United States, they will refuse you. And so, well, something I advise all of my, when I work with clients as a consultant, something that I advise all of them is really work into your answers, your home ties as much as possible. Don't wait for the officer to ask you, what do you plan on doing after you graduate, or what are your ties to your home country? You can usually find a way to work that into your answers regardless of what question they're asking you. You know, the purpose of your travel to the United States, the reason why you chose this university, the reason why you chose this program, how are you paying for it? All of these things can come back to, well, here's my plan for what I'm doing back home, and this is what I want to do. This is what I will be doing. This is the opportunity that I have. Really bring your home ties into your answers as much as possible.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dan, and thank you everyone who attended. We do these monthly. So if you like what you saw today and you're one of the people that are 6 weeks out, come to our next one next month. You can register on our website. If you like Udeti, you can find them on social media as well. And until next time, Dan, we'll see you then. And everyone else, please stay empowered.